Hey, it's John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and it's the Entrepreneurial You, the show for dedicated and passionate Caribbean entrepreneurs seeking daily inspiration, brought to you by author, speaker, and award-winning entrepreneur Heneka Watkis-Porter. You must be prepared to ignite.
It is time for another episode of the Entrepreneurial You podcast. And of course, I'm your host, Heneka Watkis-Porter. If you are new here, welcome, welcome, welcome. And of course, if you've been listening before, then welcome back. So did you catch last week's episode with the man behind Spur Tree Spices, Mohan Jagnarine? Trust me, it was such an inspiring episode, to say the least. Now, Mohan shared his journey marked by humble beginnings with us, the experience of walking barefooted on Guyana's dirt track to get to school, having only received his first pair of shoes at the very age of 10. And the lessons his life taught him. This week, I am speaking with a celebrity business owner, I like to call him, to learn about his path to entrepreneurial success. And it's going to be another great one, I promise you that. The Entrepreneurial You is supported by HenekaWatkis-Porter.com, the National People's Co-operative Bank of Jamaica Limited, committed to the growth and development of their members, Profit Jumpstarter, and the Jamaica Stock Exchange. And of course, you should check out their podcast as well, which is proudly hosted and produced by me. And here's a word from them. After that, I will be introducing my guest and getting our conversation going.
We needed to raise capital, but our experience with local financial institutions was that they were cautious and slow to act, and interest rates were far too high. We had real concerns about financing our business through outside equity investors and the possibility of interference. Could we get a fair valuation for our business? We had our own ideas about the business and its value. Should I go the traditional route of bank financing, or should I try the Jamaica Stock Exchange? So we made a call and experienced transformation of our business through conversations. I'm John Mafood, CEO of Jamaican Teas, and we're listed on the Jamaica Stock Exchange.
Give us a call today at 876-967-3271 to begin your transformation through conversation. We want to see your company listed on the Jamaica Stock Exchange.
Now, David Letterman has a show that's called My Guest Needs No Introduction. And I kind of feel the same way about my guest today on episode 271 of the Entrepreneurial You podcast. He is Gary Matala. Now, Gary is the director of the Kelly Group, Newstone, Franjam, CSI, Brick. An amazing business mogul, I must say, and just an adventurous individual who, from what I can see, has a zest for life and living. Welcome, 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 Gary.
Thank you for having me, Heneka.
Absolutely.
Great to be here.
Yeah, man, it's a pleasure to have you as well. Now, what do you love most about being Jamaican?
Wow. What is there not to love about being Jamaican? I don't know. I mean, certainly it sets you apart from many on the global scale. I mean, Jamaica is such a well-known brand, and it's such a huge brand that no matter where I've been in the world and no matter who I've come across, regardless of the geographic location and regardless of the person's place in society, just always seems to have that same kind of wow factor. So I don't know. I mean, I've never been asked that question before, but it's a great question. It's just Jamaica just is a vibe, you know?
It's a vibe. Really, it is.
Vibe.
And given that that's your response, I'm going to flip the script a bit. I really wanted to start from, you being a child and stuff and go into that. But we can get there at another point. So where I'm going to go based on your response is you being, the shrewd businessman that you are, capitalizing on this brand Jamaica, particularly using the Usain Bolt Tracks on Record venture. Let's talk about that.
My background is in construction, and I've been involved in construction from birth, call it, right? Mm-hmm. Even when I went away to school and came back, and I got very involved in construction with my family. And And from there, it decided to go out on my own. And that's the whole, I guess we can talk about the entrepreneurial bug from
bites you, right?
But to speak specifically about how I ended up in the kind of the entertainment, food and beverage space was really more. It was never really intended to be a main gig for me, to be honest with you. It was more just an investment, and not even so much an investment looking for any great return, but more a fun investment. So it was really it started off in the nightclub space, right? Didn't start off as Tracks and Records. We started off with Fiction Lounge in 2008. Fiction was really a group of friends that decided that we wanted to try a slightly different format of nightclub and lounge in Jamaica, different than what was available on the market at the time. And you'll remember in 2000, well, from long before my time, you had Ribby and Gypsy that controlled the nightclub industry in Jamaica for years and years, probably 20 odd years, just uninterrupted. I mean, they had other people that kind of came in the space and left, but those guys really just control the thing. And those were the gurus in that industry. So, and I have a very good relationship with them. And in the early days of Fiction and creating the whole Fiction concept, we went to Ribby and Gypsy and really spoke to them about what we wanted to do. I think there was some slight differences in terms of how we felt it would be received. Certainly, we had this vision that Jamaica was ready for it, and a really kind of premium type offering, bottle service, VIP settings. And anyway, we opened our doors in 2008, and the rest was history. It was a tremendous success. We had, within the first, I think if you look at what we projected that business to do versus what it did, you would think we're just totally ridiculous, because we had no idea it was going to be as successful as it was. I mean, literally 20, 30 times better performance than we had anticipated, than we had projected. So, yeah.
So it was, you just wanted it to be a hobby, right?
It was a home run out of the blocks. So after about the first year, we said, we had options in front of us. We were either going to just ride that out through the business cycle until it died, or a natural death, or we were going to leverage the success we were having in Fiction onto something else. And that's where the joint passion for Jamaica and feeling that brand Jamaica just was poised for so much more than, and we felt that we could really package brand Jamaica within four walls of a entertainment space and standardize it and export it, really get it going on a global scale. And that was kind of the basis behind, or the driver behind, Tracks and Records.
This is your first franchising, venture of sorts.
Yeah, it is. And what happened was we opted to use a franchising business model as opposed to building it out ourselves, really for the wrong reasons. Because truthfully, in hindsight, I think we should have probably built it out ourselves, opened the multiple locations, operated them successfully, and then moved to franchise. But of course, because we, young guys minus the capital and the experience, what I think we did was in a effort to try and get around having to come up with all of that money up front to build it ourselves, we opted to go with a franchising model and have other people use their capital to build the assets, and then we would just control the brand and build it out like that. That proved to be very difficult to do, and we were told it was going to be difficult to do, and that was okay. We went ahead using that approach, and just through sheer persistence And the fact that we had created something so good, we actually got some really good traction, signed on 3 franchisees, built out additional locations. So that's how we ended up growing out that business.
Mm-hmm. And so, but you have another franchise opportunity or venture, don't you? Franjam.
Right. So what Franjam was created for now was really a vehicle to focus on franchising and building out of different brands. So the fact that we had gone through the process of creating Tracks and Records, a Tracks and Records franchise, and all the documentation that goes with that and all the legal stuff that goes with that, we said, all right, you know what? We have established an expertise within our group that we can now leverage on to other things. So the thinking behind Franjam was, look, let us make franchising a whole business for us. So that was really the kind of the idea of creating Franjam and using that as the vehicle now to not only sell franchises for Tracks and Records and whatever other brand we want to franchise, but also the training and support that goes along with selling a franchise, because it's not just about selling a franchise. Actually, we never really say we sell franchises. We say we recruit franchisees. Sorry.
Yes.
And the idea is that because when you sell something, somebody pays you money, you give them the thing,
and that's it. You no longer care about it, really.
Right. So with a franchisee, you really are. It's a partnership, and it never ends, right? So you're really trying to recruit the right franchisee, somebody who fits your profile, and somebody you're going to work with now on a longer term basis to make sure that the brand standards are upheld, and to make sure that their investment continues to grow and that they get the return, as well as that you are able to. I've always said there's no such thing as a successful franchisor without successful franchisees. You cannot be a successful franchisor if your franchisee is not successful.
Absolutely.
So we are very aligned in that regard, right?
Mm-hmm. It's a partnership. So I think for many Jamaican business owners don't consider the option of franchising, right? It's not something that, it's a viable option for many. They don't see it that way. So what are some of the pieces of advice that you'll be able to give somebody to consider that as a business model for themselves?
In any industry, there are a number of different ways to skin the cat, and franchising is
That's
one.
So Jamaican, Gary.
Franchising is just one business model, and as I mentioned before, very appropriate in some situations. I mean, you're going to have a scenario that just balls for franchising, whereas you'll have another scenario that says, "Why this is not ideal for a franchise type business model." And you really need to do your research. And depending on what type of business you're in, you need to kind of get yourself into a business model that is going to give that business the best chances for success and the best chances for growth and the best chances for development. So some businesses are more capital intensive, some are less capital intensive, but maybe require more human resource side of things if you're in the service industry, right? When you're on the entertainment industry side, there's all kinds of different models that would be applicable in different scenarios. So it's tough to say, but franchising is definitely a very popular business model on a global scale. It's a great way to expand a concept if you have a good concept and you feel like it can do really well in other markets. Right, because you get to tap into local knowledge of the other markets. Right, you get to control the brand standards. It's just a great way to really kind of scale up without, the conventional get your money, build your thing, operate your thing, go to the next location, get your money, build your thing, operate your thing. That can be very difficult in some cases. So I would say it's situational, right? It's gonna be dependent on each situation.
And to each his own. I kind of dabbled somewhat in franchising a couple years ago. On a very small scale, albeit I wanted to do that for Patois Apparel. It never worked, but so we touched a little bit on, your business ventures or some of them. We want to get to your family upbringing. What were you like? Talk about your family business and talk about your, that culture that was around entrepreneurship for you.
I'm born in a very big family, right? So my grandfather it was 11 siblings, and so that would have been, call it the first generation of the business, of the family business that I kind of was born into. There were seven brothers. 7 of the 11 went away and fought in World War II, and while they were away in World War II, they all gained different skill sets, right? So when after the war and everybody kind of reconvened in Jamaica, I think everybody brought some unique skill sets to the table, and that was kind of the early days of the family business, and that's where it was born, and it grew into a significant. By the time I was born and got into the mix, I'm now third generation, right? I think we were up to 20 odd companies at the time. And of course, the second generation was 20 odd people, and then by the time it hit my generation, now you're talking about 30 odd, 40 odd people. So it's a very, very big family. But my immediate family, I just have one older brother and my mom and dad, and so 4 of us. We actually spent a lot of time in the US. I had a lot of family in Jamaica, so I would do a lot of back and forth kind of thing, right? So. And then was able to be here for, even when I was in school in Florida. I spent, Easter, Christmas, Thanksgiving, summer,
all the things that mattered in Jamaica.
Every waking moment I could be here, I was here. So yeah, it was I guess a pretty normal childhood. It was a good childhood, very close-knit family. But I also, growing up, seeing my dad working and my grandfather working, I was exposed to whatever it was they were doing, and not that I understood what they were doing, but I was definitely around them a lot, even in the working environments growing up. Before I went to university, I came back, I rejoined the family in Jamaica and was working. At the time, we had just started Greater Portmore. It was 1992.
Mm-hmm. And let's, for those who don't know, your family business is?
Right. So what I was involved in was the construction side of the business. So the family, we've been involved in construction, hosing. We've been involved in dredging projects. So we've done big dredging projects around the island and around the Caribbean as well. But yeah, at that time, the West Indies Home Contractors was just beginning what at the time was the largest housing development in the Caribbean, and that was Greater Portmore. And the first phase was supposed to be 10,000 houses over a 5-year period. Now, if you do the math, you'll realize that is an insanely fast pace of building out houses. And the way that we're able to achieve that is through a proprietary building system that my uncle had created, right? A precast, prefabricated building system. And the idea was not to build houses and sell them to people. There was a huge shortage of houses on the market in Jamaica at the time, especially in the affordable housing range. And what ended up happening was, we created this building system. We were able to build many houses very quickly at very low cost. And the houses were built extremely strong. And they were really designed as what we called starter homes. So the idea was that as homeowners were able to afford to do expansion to their homes, as time went on, they would go ahead and do that, right? So these were very basic starter homes at very affordable rates. I'll never forget the first set of houses we went to sail with for Greater Portmore were like 80,000 Jamaican dollars. Obviously, the exchange rate was very different at the time, but
still, think about $80,000, eh?
Correct. And of course, because, and you had to qualify for it as well, right? Mm-hmm. So, and not qualify in the sense that you needed to demonstrate that you had enough money to buy it. You had to actually demonstrate that you didn't have too much money to buy it. So he didn't want people going in there and buying 5 of them as an investment.
And selling them and stuff like that. Yeah.
Built and designed and marketed to people that couldn't afford to get homes for themselves otherwise, right? Mm-hmm. So that was the thinking. So that was it. That was kind of my introduction to business. Eventually, I guess the fast track, the rest of it, I went away. I did that for a couple of years, then left and went back to university. I did my undergrad in Boca Raton. I started at Florida Atlantic University, and then I ended up graduating from Lynn University in business and entrepreneurship. And throughout the whole time I was in university, I was coming home and working in the summers and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. So you had a very successful family business that you were a part of. I mean, and why you had to leave to go start your own? I mean, couldn't you just stay? Which part of the day? Gary.
That's what they were saying to me. How you mean you want to leave?
Yeah, what happened? Why? Who does that?
Yeah, it's a great question. But what happened, Heneka, is after I came back from doing my undergrad, I was working in the business. I had a great position. I'd worked my way up. I'd started at the very, very basic positions on the construction side, from in surveying, sewer and water. I mean, I had some really not very
executive jobs.
Far from executive. So what ended up happening was I worked my way up. I got to become a project manager, managing the projects. And the company.
So you mean you didn't get to that phase just by being a Masalon?
Definitely not. In fact, I think it was the reverse. They were making a point of me having to kind of understand all of the different areas of the job. So I had some not so great jobs along the way while I was working my way to that level. But the thing about it is, when I did eventually get to the point of becoming a project manager in the company, I started to have my own ideas, right? I started to bring things to the bigger heads and say, why don't we do things? Why don't we do it like this? Or why don't we do it like that? And not taking anything away from the business. The family business has been extremely successful. Started in the mid-50s and just grew and really developed some great communities across the island and even across the region. We did jobs in Trinidad, we did jobs in St. Kitts. So, the family business was a great business, but it's because it was a large business and because it was a bit of an older business, it had its own culture. It had its own ways. And I, as a young, energetic business person, wanted to kind of do things a little bit different. And it just it wasn't aligned with the business at the time. Let's just leave it at that. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to try and try a thing on my own. So I actually got together with a fella named Dayton Levy, who's a little bit older than me, had a little bit more experience than me, but we were very, very shared a lot of the same philosophies, very aligned in so many different ways. And we decided that we were going to take a stab at it. And we started a project management firm, and that was in 2004. And that was Newstone Limited. So Newstone Limited started as just the two of us working out of the house. I mean, there was no real there wasn't any kind of great
fancy office and stuff like that. Yeah.
It was very basic. We started off like that. And to be truthful, we had one job that we were going to use to kind of kick off the company. And it was to build 6 very high-end houses in Kingston for 3 clients. And we started the preliminary works, the planning, the costing, all of that stuff. And then they decided to pull the plug on the project. So, so here it is now. of giving up my cushy salary and company,
all the perks that come with that,
and cell phone and everything else that came along with that, only to now have my own business with no revenue, right? So we weren't able to take salary. We sat there and kind of looked at each other for a few months, saying, "Well, what have we really done here?" And we tried to, it's tough because you're a new company, you don't have any track record. You're offering something that not everybody necessarily even knows they need, right, or want. So there was a tough period there for a while, and then after when I got to the point where I was ready to dust off my resume and put my tail between my legs and go back and see what I could get, either go get a job somewhere or whatever. But no, before we had to do that, we did land a job, and it happened to be a massive job. So, just good fortune and good timing, and, the fact that we had done the kind of the foundation work to be able to position ourselves to get a job like this was great. And it was the job that first job that we got was actually the Richmond development in St. Anne. And
that was you.
Yeah.
Oh, so I love it.
So we started that job in when it was bush. It was just an idea. And that's when we got brought into the mix. Mm-hmm. And we set up the building system and started off the company with that job. And that job actually rolled us into our second job, which was another massive job. So out of the gate, we ended up with two really, really solid jobs. The second job was for Vistaprint in Montego Bay, which is a 90,000 square foot call center. So we went from like zero to hero overnight. It really was.
Literally. Wow.
Well, it didn't feel like overnight, but it really was, from going from nothing to
something. Yes.
Very, very solid jobs. And then that was that. And then what happened as we started to grow now and build a name for ourselves, we started to get pulled into other things that were a little bit outside of the scope of what we were doing, right? So, rather than just offer the project management services, we found a lot of people were asking us to actually build out their projects for them. So it's tough to do that as a project manager. You really need to be a general contractor. So we completely started a separate business, completely separate from the project management business, which is Construction Systems International, or CSI. That company now would focus on actually getting projects and building them out for people. So that company has actually grown and now is even bigger than the project management company. So you're still running those companies in addition to your other 9 to 5 or others. Well, what happened was, when COVID hit in 2000, it really kind
2020,
kind of wiped out the whole food and beverage thing for quite a while, and in particular the model that we had was a very it's a very sophisticated operating platform. I mean, casual dining is, you're talking about, you have a lot of touch points. You're talking about you're talking about hosts or hostess. You're talking about servers. You're talking about sanitation crews. You're talking about bartenders. You're talking about it's a very labor intensive, very service oriented platform. So when something like COVID hits, it's just not ideal for that type of business model, right? So we got hit. We got double whammy. We got hit by COVID like everybody else, but then we also got hit. But we're in very high rent type environments where tons of labor. Large areas are energy costs are very high, and that model works when you have great volumes. But when you have no volume, it renders that model completely dead, right? So we had a lot of re-engineering to do on the F&B side, but fortunately for me, the construction side, while one was shrinking, the other one was blowing up. For whatever reason, throughout the pandemic and beyond, it has just exponentially become more active, that whole industry, not just us, but the whole industry. And our companies have been able to capitalize on that. So we've seen significant growth since 2020 on the construction side, CSI and Newstone both. And our third company we've actually created throughout the pandemic, which is called Brick. And Brick is really a supply chain company, as well as equipment hireage. And we have some dealerships for certain construction related products and stuff like that. So yeah, very kind of a lot of horizontal,
diverse, and yes, and all of that. Like, I like it a lot. I'm thinking I perhaps need to come and sit at your feet and learn some things. Before I touch into more non-business aspects of this conversation that I want to go into, one question I want to ask is Matalon, that name, hindered or aided? What has it done more?
It's funny, and I have this conversation from time to time with people. It's actually both, right? So I'm not going to tell you that that it doesn't. I mean, for certain, I think it helps to open doors where doors need to be opened. I think it's not just the name, but also the legacy. My grandfather and his siblings and my father and that whole generation, we've a very good reputation in business and just being upstanding, honorable business people. And I think that I've been able to kind of tuck in under that and really kind of benefit from that, you know, that road that they had paved, right, for the rest of the family. So that's been great, and certainly also gives you a very high bar that you have to maintain to uphold, you know, those standards. But it also becomes very difficult, you know, especially as a young business person starting out, you know, to walk into a room and try to negotiate a good rate for something when the person at the other side of the table thinks that you have this money tree that, you know what I mean, that's just constantly bearing, or you know, that there's this some secret pot of gold that just is bottomless, that just continues to, you know, is at my disposal for, you know, it makes it very difficult. And I will say that it has been a challenge. It has been a challenge along the way, and it has also been a benefit, you know.
All right, I'm going to talk with you about family and the things that are important to you, Gary. But let me just pause here to read a review that comes from someone a listener who goes by the name R. Listens, and she is based in the United States of America. And the caption for the review: so much value here. Heneka is an exceptional host, and she has put a lot of care into her show. You won't find any angles here, just real stories from real entrepreneurs all over the world. Highly recommend this to anyone and everyone. Thank you so much, R.W. Listen. I really appreciate you spending time, not just to listen, but also to give your feedback on what you've listened. And if you write a review, please send me an email at henekawatkis-porter@gmail.com and let me know so that I can shout you out right here on the show. All right, let me get back to my conversation with Gary Matalon. Gary, I know because I've watched you online and I see some of the things that are important to you. I know family for you is like way up there, right? So let's talk about that. You know, how has your family inspired you? And yeah.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. The family for me is definitely everything. And I grew up in a very close-knit family, and I'm just so grateful for the family that I have now. Tina and I have been married for 18 years, and we have three beautiful children. So Sydney, Jacob, and Haley, and they are just, I mean, each so different, but just so phenomenal. I mean, just really, really, I'm truly blessed. I don't even know how else to put it. It's fantastic. The whole family life is really an amazing experience, and I give thanks every day. Really is fantastic. We do everything together. We eat dinner together as a family every night. But now my eldest is away at boarding school. She's home now for the summer, but she's away at boarding school now, and that's tough, a bit tough to deal with. And I know that my son is getting close to that now too. I think he'll be going away probably next year as well. So I don't know, that I'm having a hard time getting my head around that. But other than that, it's just outstanding. Like we look forward to doing things together as a family, and it really is just fantastic. I don't know how else to put it. It's amazing.
Yeah, and to my listeners, I can tell you that he's actually very doing this whole beaming thing as we were talking about family and stuff. Like he's literally beaming, you know. So that's where his heart is. So outside of family, what gives you joy?
Wow, you know what? I can tell you in the last 10 years in particular, it's really just been all about, you know, as the kids grow up, it's it really just joy for me comes from them having joy, you know. And my daughter,
he couldn't help himself. He's gone back to family.
I mean, my son plays football and plays for his school, he plays for his club, and they are now traveling to the tournaments in different places. Earlier this year, we went to Netherlands with the team, and he played there. They had great success there. And I gotta tell you, I mean, there is absolutely nothing else in the world I would rather be doing than watching him play. And you know, it's interesting because growing up, I played football as well, and my dad never missed out. I don't even think he missed a practice, much less a match. I don't know how he found the time. I guess back in the day, things were a little bit different, but yeah, no, for me, it is really the greatest joy. But I like traveling. I love to throw some food on the grill on the weekend, and I like to go fishing from time to time, although I've not done that in forever.
So let me ask you, when you go, you catch anything, or you just go for the fun of it? Okay, I'm just gonna ask.
I haven't been in a while though, and those are things that I do miss. But you know, it's difficult because time, and the time that we do get off from work, you really just kind of want to be with the whole family and do things, you know, as a group, and you know, things like golf and stuff like that just haven't really fit in. I'm sure I'll get back around to that at some point in time, but not for right now.
Yeah. So, you know, with somebody being so involved in family and all of that, we have all of these businesses, right? How you find the time to make your priorities your priorities?
That's a very difficult one. And especially nowadays with cell phone and iPad and everybody connected 24/7, it's increasingly more difficult to kind of, you know, disconnect. But you just have to do it. I mean, you really have to kind of get your head around it and carve out the time, whether it is that you're going to sign off at a particular time in the evening. You know, there was a time when I didn't, I'll be honest with you, in the early days of starting up the business. I mean, there were times when I would be just going around the clock, and, you know, everybody else just had to kind of hang out and wait until that. You know, it was like that. But then you realize that, you know what, if I lock off at 6 o'clock today, the business is still going to be there in the morning when I wake up.
True.
That downtime now becomes so important. And when you realize that, you actually become more effective in the times that you are, you know, focused on working.
Because after a while, the law of diminishing marginal returns do set in, and it makes sense. Adding each unit of work not going to change anything.
You know, when I do an interview like this, I feel sometimes that I'm sounding a bit cliche, but the reason they're cliches is because there's something behind them, right? There's a lot of things that people say that you don't realize how true they are until it really becomes your
reality. Yes.
Exactly.
Your reality. All right. What irks you, Gary?
I would say dishonesty. I don't have time for people that are trying
disingenuous and
really
deceptive and
kind of really irks me. That's a good word. Irks. Yes.
Yeah.
It irks me.
Oh my gosh. You know what? Our time has been well spent. At this point, I'm going to ask you to share, your final thoughts. If you have any piece of advice. I mean, there's so many things we would have touched on, but believe me, we're going to make it brief so that, persons want to hear more and they say, okay, maybe we can have him another time. That's fine. So yes, your final thoughts. What would you have to share to our audience of entrepreneurs listening in?
The entrepreneurial journey is going to be different for everybody, but there are a few common threads that, I think people need to really focus on. And again, not to sound cliche, but there is a level of determination that you need to understand if you are going to take on the entrepreneurial journey. And the reason I say that is because, everyone has the option to not become an entrepreneur, to go and seek, employment in an organization or something like that. And that's quite fine. Right. But what you don't realize, I think, there's always the idea of becoming an entrepreneur. You're thinking, I'm going to be my own boss and I'm going to make all this money. And that's great. And some entrepreneurs have ultimate success in day one, and more power to them. But they are the anomaly, right? They are not the norm. And the norm is that the shit is going to hit the fan, excuse my language. But it's going to hit the fan, and you are going to need to be prepared to barrel through that. And that is something I certainly didn't appreciate fully and completely when I was starting out. I mean, when I had my first couple of failures, and I say first couple because there are many, right? You have issues. You don't really bank on that in day one. Nobody sits there and says, oh, you know what? Everything's going to come crashing down on me at this point or that point. So, it's really going to be a matter of how do you push through, and how do you come out on the other end, and how do you know what I mean? And that, if you can condition yourself to say, all right, boy, we're going to hell and back, then, you don't want it to become a surprise. You don't want it to hit you as a complete blindside surprise, right? I mean, I've been through sometimes where I just wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, but I tell you what, embrace those challenges and embrace those periods, because those are the periods that are going to prepare you for the success that you're going to have down the road. Mm-hmm. And again, I fear sounding cliche, but it is the most profound thing that I can tell you that has been, for me, has been the kind of the defining point of my whole entire entrepreneurial career.
Mm-hmm. So I did say your final thoughts is my final question, but I'm putting myself in my audience's shoe right now, and I'm thinking, you've mentioned challenges a few times, and we've just been talking about your successes, and for the most part, what has been one of your most daunting challenge? Yes, you did talk about, when you left to form the business and not one, but one of those challenges that stood out for you, and how did you overcome?
One of the early challenges I ever faced, and probably one of the biggest that I had to overcome, was when we were first starting out in Traction Records. I had made an application to TPDCO and the Ministry of Tourism, and there was a incentive that was in place for attractions, right? And if you were building an attraction, you could get certain concessions on duties and import duties and stuff like that. I went ahead. I was encouraged by somebody in the government at the time to apply, because what we were building would easily qualify as a attraction, right? I said, great. Now you're talking about $1 million worth of investment. So of like the kitchen equipment and the furniture and those things, a lot of that, if we could bring that in duty free, we would have saved, you're talking about $200,000 worth of savings, right? So we went through the process and we got approved for this incentive. So it was like, everything was just falling into place. Beautiful. I went to the bank. I got a bank loan, borrowed $400,000, took the savings that we had generated from the nightclub business, plus the loan that we had taken out, right? And started to purchase and started to build out this restaurant, getting ready to open Usain Bolt Tracks and Records in Kingston. And when the first container of stuff arrived, we followed the process. We got the stuff, brought it to the location, and it was fantastic. Unloaded the container, great. The second container load of stuff came, and the Ministry of Finance decided at that point that the IMF is giving them pressure and they can no longer honor any of the incentives. And I said, but you have already approved us. We've already brought in stuff, and you can't do that to us now. And they said, well, there's ministerial discretion. The minister can make that call. And I said, but you've just put me out of business. Where am I going to find? After now, I can't borrow any more money from the bank. I don't have any more money myself to pay. So we've already dumped a bunch of money into the thing. I can't recover that back. So it's not like I can stop on what I'm doing. I mean, like literally, what does somebody do at that point in time? It was dead. It was absolutely dead in the water. And I mean, you think to yourself, this is why people jump off of the roof. Like, I mean, literally, what are we going to do? We have nowhere we can turn. And this is where you talk about, I start to, make whatever phone calls I can make. I mean, people I was able to get in touch with, the average Jamaican wouldn't have access to, but yet I was still totally screwed. I just couldn't move. I was dead in the water. Heneka, I'm telling you, is the most challenging. I mean, literally laying awake at night, all night, thinking, how are we going to do this? You can't borrow any more money. Nobody's just come and bail you out with hundreds of thousands of US dollars, right? In something like this. And I actually even went as far as calling the media and saying I was going to plaster this on the front page of the newspaper because everybody needs to know how unfriendly a business environment this really is. And I was ready to leave Jamaica, never come back. I mean, it was that bad, That's the level of gut-wrenching pain and suffering that I was going through at the time. And it was just one day like a switch. And it was not just on its own, but a friend of mine had said, Gary, why don't you try and negotiate an arrangement? So in other words, pay the duty, but just arrange like a payment plan kind of thing. At least you will get the business off the ground. I'm like, but none of the investment analysis that we did factored in this additional cost, right? So it changed the whole dynamic of the model. And anyway, the long and short of it is we were able to negotiate an arrangement, and we were able to get the goods off of the wharf finally. But we lost about 2 or 3 months of a delay to this whole exercise that I'm explaining to you. Long and short of it, April 2011, we got the doors open. So we overcame it. But, there was many a time when you just felt like saying, well, you know what? To hell with it, I'm going to go get a job somewhere else. Makes no sense. That is one of probably 100 stories I could tell you of points in time when you feel like you just can't even, like you're going to bring up your lunch, right? Because you just don't know where you're going to go next. And it's nowadays, not to say those things still don't happen to me, but you're conditioned differently. And you tend to be a little bit more conservative. You tend to be a little bit more thorough. You tend to also, when you do get faced with these kind of diversity, these kind of diversions, you tend to react to them differently. So instead of that emotional charge that used to happen, it's now more, okay, here are how are we
going to solve this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
Interesting journey. Thanks for sharing it with me, Gary. I really appreciate your spending time with me today.
No, thanks so much for having me, Heneka, and congratulations on an amazing show.
Thank you.
It is
Thank
fantastic.
you.
I wish I had something like this listening to when I was getting
you just started, right?
Oh, you have no idea how helpful it is. It really is.
Yeah.
For young entrepreneurs to hear these stories.
Yes. Thank you so much. So you have any contacts you want to send, anyone in your particular ventures that you want to send our listeners to?
Well, the construction business, our websites are, so Newstone is NEUSTONE, newstone.com. And there's a lot of information there about what we do in our management services. We also have CSI, that's Construction Systems International, CSI.build, BUILD. And those two websites have a ton of information about what we do. Check them out. And then also we have 2 operating locations of Usain Bolt's Tracks and Records, and those are in the Marketplace in Kingston, and also on the Hip Strip in Montego Bay. Mm-hmm. So check them out. They're open 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. So every day.
Yes. Interesting menu, lovely food, lovely service. Thank you again.
And then we have a development that we built in Aracabessa, St. Mary, called Bessa, which is 86 units. And they're villas for sale. They're just gone on sale now. So you can also check out the Instagram handle is Bessa Living, at Bessa Living. That's BESSA LIVING at Bessa Living.
Wow, what a time. Again, thank you so much, Gary. And here's what's happening right now. Remember last week we started with a new segment called Money Tip, and that's brought to you by Profit Jumpstarter. Today's tip is start investing early. The sooner you start investing, the better. By investing early, you allow your investments more time to grow. Money has time value. Money earns and grows with time. Money grows with the power of compounding. Don't waste your time and start investing today. Remember, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. All right, great tip. Start early. Don't think that you're too young. Believe me, trust me. I look back and I thought to myself, you know what? You know, should I go a little harder on me the young? Yeah, you're me younger because I'm still young. What are you thinking? Thank you so much for tuning into this episode with Gary Matalon. Wow, so many gems, so many aha moments, jaw-dropping moments, you know, the highs, the lows, everything in between, what it means to be a Matalon, that name, has it aided or hindered? We've looked at that. We've looked at so many things, and it was just for me an overall inspiring episode. And I really am grateful that Gary was able to share with it, you know, his story with me. I'm sure he shared a lot, you know, on other platforms. But, you know, there are new things that he would have shared. There are different perspectives. So there is something for everyone. What is your high moment of this podcast? What's the high point for you? Please send me your feedback at Heneka Watkis-Porter at gmail.com or on social media at Heneka Watkis-Porter. And remember, follow this podcast on your favorite podcast app, Apple, Stitcher, Google, I don't know, whichever one is your preferred. There's so many of them. And you can connect with me for all things podcasting, whether it's to start your podcast, whether it's, you know, by using my course, going through my course, or buying my book, or having your one-on-one coaching, whatever. Like, I'm Jamaican podcast, do you remember? So yeah, I'm your girl. All right. According to the scriptures this week, the one who gets wisdom loves life. The one who cherishes understanding will soon prosper. Proverbs 19, verse 8. All good.